The top developers for Subnautica, a massive breakout hit, have been usurped and kicked out. But not only that, they have been robbed of $250 million in bonuses. Wowzers. That's Bobby Kotick level bonuses. And it's gone! The community backlash in general has been, naturally considering the massive success of the game, extremely middling. Well, that's strange. Why wouldn't fans be getting their pitchforks ready? Why are some even celebrating the corporate takeover? Well, it turns out this might be a bit of a karma always comes due situation. Once upon a time, games industry, you had a million eager advocates. You had people who were willing to stand up for you at any point, out of the realization that you create the fun games people want to play. They were willing to make noise and amplify discourse around the difficulties you face, and the gaming audience did not do so for money or for some passing cause. They did it out of investment. In this age, which we refer to as the toxic gamer age, if something like this happened, there would be an immediate, relatively unified community backlash. And then, games industry, you stabbed those natural advocates in the back, those people who wanted the best for gaming solely because they play games. And the games industry pulled off this betrayal to instead pursue the verbal prostitution of journalists, activists, and governments for cheap advocates who blow away with the winds of change because they care nothing about gaming. You'll hear about how thousands of games media staff lost their jobs. Notice how none of them remained interested in games, now that they're not being sponsored by a media corporation. Without corporate backing, games journalists are nothing. The most important part of their reviews was never gameplay, characters, or stories. It was the identities of the people working on the game, and the cancellation and crucifixion of any games industry members who committed a wrongthink. And that's what happened at Subnautica. The executives saw a person do excellent work for them and decided to repay them with a dagger in the back, because a persons of social media hit them with progressive kryptonite, an angry tweet. So there are some who see these backstabbing executives being paid forward. On the other hand, some say, hey, this is fair play. They're executives of the corporation. They can fire anyone they want to. So getting rid of the sound designer for not loving Big Brother is their right. And maybe that's true, however, using that logic, isn't Krafton doing the same now that they own the company? Due to a sale these very executives chose to take part in and already were paid hundreds of millions of dollars for. So isn't the firing of the executives just as fair? But this is a polarizing situation, and it is our duty to firmly, unquestionably pick the most extreme of stances and never be dissuaded from it. We need to be in one corner or the other, and picking the wrong one guarantees you are included with that group of the worst peoples from that one time who did that bad thing. You know the ones. So pick right, and make sure you comment below if I picked wrong. Remember to word it very strongly, and punch no polls. Now if it helps, the execs are claiming they had earmarked some of those bonus for their staff, which does sound great, but it was only a measly 10%. Or perhaps it was a jaw-droppingly massive 10%, depending on your corner. Now, $25 million even split among many more people, still nothing to scoff at. Those devs are getting way more than they ever deserved for leeching off the vision and greatness of these executives. Or they're being underappreciated and deserve far more for being the real reason this game did so well. So should we really care about this battle between two ultra-wealthy groups? Maybe it's really one of those nuanced things where there's a bit of rot on both ends. But while we're here, why don't we just take the most vile and evil of extremist takes? The extreme centrist. Boo, hiss. Still, there are some lessons. Let's take a detour off the who's the bad guy train. First of all, look, quiet quitting from your soul-crushing job that demands everything from you and rewards nothing, that gets a thumbs up here. But there's so many reasons to check out, and the average job is getting exponentially less fulfilling. At the same time, it gets exponentially less viable for supporting, at best, a mediocre lifestyle. However, that's not the case here. This is a jackpot situation. We're talking $250 million, 90% of which was going to just 3 people. When you get an opportunity like this, you need to lock in. Were these execs making Subnautica 2 the sort of game worthy of earning that bonus? Now Krafton is painting it as unimpressive, innovating nothing, and not being the type of upgrade you would expect between the indie first game and the heavily funded corporate sequel. On the other hand, the execs paint it as a major advancement. But it might be some time before we get to figure out who's right in this argument. However, we can say with some certainty they were distracted, as it looks like they were going to do other passion projects while their key project wasn't yet complete. Giving a bit of a flashback to those Patreon Kickstarter games where they pocket the funds only to show off a completely different project before making what they promised. There's entire YouTube channels that just talk about MMORPG scams that pull this very thing off. It is a good thing that the regular devs are going to get their bonus either way, with both sides making this promise out of the goodness of their hearts and definitely not a cynical ploy to earn public favor. Lesson 2 is one that the industry absolutely must learn if we don't want another crash in a decade or so. Whether or not Krafton is in the wrong here, if you're in an indie or small dev team with some shot at success, and you sell to a big company, you are going to be playing by their rules now. You are losing that freedom for cash. This has a bit of a lessons from the past vibe, because part of the current AAA crash, as we just saw from the mass firings at Microsoft, is so many of the studios bought up by Xbox, Sony, and Embracer are just gone now. Their staff laid off, their studios gutted, their games cancelled, their IPs now buried forever in the vault of a huge corporation that likely will never care about it. Giants buying out the little guys has resulted in a scouring of talent from the industry. And here's the secret: this massive amount of funding, followed by shutdowns that gained them absolutely nothing, will not cause huge companies to learn anything. They will do this again. And watching all these studios get bought up, cut up for scraps, devs laid off, niche and beloved franchises forever killed, small studios will also learn nothing from this. Indies will repeat this, and they will all be tempted when targeted by the promise of sudden sales, the potential of a huge studio budget for their franchises, and that huge bag of cash. We have complete buffoons running the games industry, and that's an undeniable fact. An extra budget boosts the franchise higher, and the bigger, better games make more and more money. A triple win situation, where the huge corpo gets a big return, the devs get better support to make more creative games, and the gamers get to play those bigger, better funded games. At least, that is what should happen. What happened once upon a time, and what would still be happening if we had competence instead of ideology in charge of the games industry. What should happen is the success of Mario gives us Mario World. The success of Final Fantasy 1 leads to Final Fantasy 7, Halo to Halo 3, Icewind Dale to Dragon Age Origins, and so on. Use your successes to keep making bigger successes. But at some point, most AAA studios forgot how to do this, and now they pillage their past successes, or more increasingly, buy and pillage someone else's successes, only to turn their critically acclaimed Arkham Batman series into Kill the Justice League. When what should be happening is we go from Demon Souls to Dark Souls to Bloodborne to Elden Ring. They betrayed their obligations. And because corporations have done this, they have hurt everyone. Developers are being laid off. Massive brain drain in the industry. Shutting down games they spend half a decade and hundreds of millions of dollars on, and then sometimes it's cancelled before it even comes out. Gamers are stuck watching decades of franchise world building for games and series they love get flushed down the toilet over and over by activists who never liked the franchise they gained control over through blackmail and threats to begin with. We will probably get a Subnautica 2, but is that going to be the end of it? Will fans make good on a boycott over the executives being forced out? Would Krafton have made more by just keeping the team together and paying the executives? We'll get to see eventually how this ends up. Subnautica, though, is now struggling for air, drowning with a corporate leviathan poised to put it out of its misery for good. So rather than convincing you to pick a side between rich executives or richer corporation, keep an eye on the studios you love when they find success. And make sure you remind them that bowing to the activist lynch mob or selling out to massive corporations, these are death sentences. If you make a deal with the devil, you will go to hell. And that's not dooming, it's just being blunt. But if you'd rather I butter you up with some lies and sell you false hope for your favorite game now rotting in a corporate vault, I apologize for absolutely nothing.